Sainz can count himself as a race winner, and a race winner for Ferrari at that. Welcome to episode 210 of Grid Talk. Today we're here to discuss all the day's action for the British Grand Prix. My name is Owain Medford, and joining me we have Philip Mathew from the Grip Strip podcast.
Hello.
And Sophia, Richmond, and Downey from Everything F1.
Hi.
Hello.
But first, if you enjoy this podcast, we would love it if you could take 5 to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. If you do, you'll automatically go into our monthly draw to win a Grid Talk t-shirt from our champion range of merch. Our winner this month was Aaron Garrett 785 for his 5-star reviews. If you could email media@f1chronicle.com to arrange shipping of your prize. But basically, make sure to be in the draw for next month. And if you're one of the 72% of people who aren't yet subscribed to the channel, please consider helping us out with a like and subscribe. So it was first place for Carlos Sainz. It's been a long time coming, and that's a great result for him, obviously, Tom. And to beat out the team that he was sort of dropped from all those years ago, that's really got to take the cake, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they say third time's the charm. It's more like 150 times the charm this time for Sainz. But yeah, it probably is. It probably is also a bit sweet for him to beat out Red Bull. Obviously, he was Max's teammate for a season and roughly a third back in 2015, 2016. So yeah, I'd imagine he's not only happy to finally have the win, he's also probably quite pleased that he beat Red Bull. In that sense, it's just nice to see him win. To be honest, I've said it a few times that I want to see him win. He's come close several times. Monza 2020 springs to mind when he was driving for McLaren, and he said, "I want this win." When he was gunning down Gasly, he's been second a few times. He's also coming into this race. I was a bit concerned that Sainz just never led a race. He's never known how to lead. But I forgot that in Russia last year, he didn't beat Lando off the line, but he got an awesome toe down into turn 2, and he took the lead from Lando Norris then, and he was holding his own in the lead for a while. And he's led some races. Led some laps this season. And also with the race restarts, he somewhat got mugged by Max to begin with, but second time round after the very, very scary crash, he basically said, "Nah, sod you, mate. If you want this position, you're going to have to come and take it off me." And it was nice to see Sainz then and at the end of the race get his elbows out, sort of put his foot down a bit, not quite literally, and and say, "No, this is my place. I'm having it. I've earned it. I'm keeping it. And matey boy, if you want it, you got to come and take it, sunshine." So it was nice to see Sainz have that bit of aggression about him, or that bit of sort of not sort of rough and ready, but it's sort of like bravado, or a bit of just a bit more. Well, yeah, a bit more aggression, I suppose. And then at the end of the race, when Ferrari was saying leave 10 car lengths, he said to his engineer, he said, "Lol, no hun, I got Hamilton practically sniffing my gearbox. I'm not going to leave 10 car lengths because I'm going to be super vulnerable." And he was basically saying, "No, I'm doing me. If you don't like it, suck it, and I'm going to go and take this win." And that's exactly what I did, and it was really nice to see.
Yeah, it's almost a slightly different Sainz that we saw. I thought that maybe he would be a bit like, I thought when he got a little bit hung out to dry initially, but as you say, he really, I'm glad to see him, stamp his authority to the team in ways, and everyone else on track of I am here. He's taken him 10 races, but he's really getting sort of in 2022. He's really getting started. After that, we have obviously the Red Bull of Sergio Perez, Sophia, and it's, I don't know, for me at least, I kind of find that this is like a sort of a successful failure for Red Bull. Would you see it that way?
Yeah, I can understand your thinking of it. Paris did very well towards the end. That battle in those last 10 laps, that was probably the highlight of the entire race for me. I think it turned into like a mini sprint race just then. You even had 4 cars wide a few times, but even also in the start as well, you had the 2 Ferraris and the 2 Red Bulls kind of all battling out in the front to begin with. Obviously, Perez suffered from front wing damage to begin with, and then pitted very like pretty much straight after, because I think he had the black and orange flags. And I thought that was going to be the end of it. I thought that was like he was done. I think he was like running about 40 or like 30 seconds back from the pack. Like he was just completely out of it. And then obviously the safety cars and all the changing of everything that took place absolutely just bunched it up and made it perfect for him. And he made drive of the day. He got 20% of the votes, which wasn't my drive of the day, but I could see why he was good, because those defendings that he had on that last 10 laps and the tire management that he was having as well, it was good for Red Bull for one of the drivers, maybe not so much for Max, given the amount of damage that he is currently claiming to have suffered throughout the race. 4 pit stops as well for Max compared to 2, I think, for Perez. But no, it was good for Perez. The points were needed for him, and it was good for constructors for Red Bull as well.
Yeah, absolutely excellent for Red Bull and the constructors. After him, we have, and I just want to say, I predicted this. I predicted this earlier this week, and I was right. We have Lewis Hamilton in 3rd. That Mercedes, it's taken them half a season, but they've done a world of stuff on it, and it's actually to the point where, you know what, we thought genuinely looked like it could win a race. How happy will Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes be with that, Phil?
I'm pretty sure he's really happy about it, because I know I am, and I'm a Lewis Hamilton fan. So the fact of the matter is the qualifying didn't work out as well yesterday for Owain. On that last lap, I think the charging and trying to figure out how to time when to take that last lap, probably just missed on it, unfortunately, and he wanted to be further up. He gets a great start on the initial start of the race and was up to 3rd. So who knows what could have came from that. Then you reset, has to come back from 4th, gets a little bit of an assist because Perez has to go off with the wing issue, and then kind of gets let go once he passes Lando Norris. And he was kind of on his own at that point, but he was catching the Ferraris, and it looked like he was able to at least compete with them. The way things were going prior to the Ocon breakdown and full safety car, there was an opportunity, minus the slow pit stop, that Lewis Hamilton might have been able to win the race, which is the first time all year we could say that. It's the first time all year Mercedes, I mean, outside of last race at Canada where they had a little more pace too. I mean, Lewis looked like himself again at Canada. And then this race, it's the British Grand Prix. You know he's going to always have all the energy and positivity in the world to want to be there and do well for the fans. And it just seemed like the energy was there in all good positives this weekend. It didn't seem like, they had a little issues in practice with the porpoising, but it wasn't as severe. There's other stuff that's come out through the news and in regards to the aero and the downforce side, and might come up here later. But the reality is the Mercedes car actually didn't look bad. Yeah, it can't compete against a Red Bull on outright pace, especially on straightaways, but the car looked drivable. The car was usable. It looked like something that can compete. And for the World Championship itself, both on drivers and constructors, it's a positive sign. At the end of the day, we kind of know what's going to happen in regards to both of those championships, unless something really crazy happens with power units or, certain other things. But little argy-bargy by a certain driver based on how he drives other people. But other than that, really, we know what's going to happen in the drivers and the constructors this year. But Mercedes actually being competitive is going to make a real positive 3-team fight up front. And Lewis getting his 13th podium in the British Grand Prix, which is insanity, means that he's getting closer to the possibility of continuing his string of poles and wins for every year of his career. The possibility that might happen depending on the circuit. So it's a good thing, honestly, for the field and for Formula One, honestly, in my opinion.
Yeah, it certainly takes the sting out of a DNF for George, which we'll talk about later. After that, we've got in fourth place, a little bit further behind, a driver I personally think got hung out to dry, and I think it's indicative of, in some ways, what happened with Ferrari today. As much as they've won the race, Tom, they've really kind of screwed the pooch with this one, haven't they?
Yeah, Leclerc. Yeah, I was a bit confused as to why Ferrari didn't pit him when the safety car came out. I understand maybe they're going for a split strategy, but in that position, you could see that everyone was going to pit for softs because we knew we were going to get a handful of racing laps, and it was never going to be anything but a shootout, and it was the closest thing we've had to a sprint event since we had the sprint in Imola earlier in the year. So yeah, not Sainz. I'm not sure what my brain is. Leclerc, hang out to dry. I thought he actually did quite well, given he was on worn hard tires, and he had someone of the caliber of Lewis Hamilton bearing down behind him. Perhaps he just driving up behind him going, I can smell you, and then was sort of lining up to overtake him. He did well. I got to be honest, when I saw Leclerc getting his elbows out just as much as he did, it was hypocritical, I know, from a Max fan, but hey ho. Seeing just how much Leclerc was getting his elbows out, there are a few points where I was thinking, is that sort of like going too far? Because it was when Perez came under investigation for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. Then maybe I'm biased because I'm a Red Bull fan, but I thought you can't really call that an advantage given Leclerc basically gave him nowhere to go. But I think, there's also the precedent that we got, so we know that we can race that hard. And I mean, if there are three drivers on the grid who are going to race that hard, it's going to be Leclerc, it's going to be Russell, and it's going to be Max. So let's enjoy that hard racing when it comes around, because because we've always been talking about let them race. There's a big thing last year about let them race, and this is exactly what we want to see. Going back to Leclerc's actual race, sorry, my computer's got mad. Going back to Leclerc's actual race, he was a bit of a sitting duck on the safety car restart. And he was throwing a bit of a tantrum over the radio as well at some points. I did find it quite amusing after the race finished, and when you just grinned, I think you know what I'm going to say, was when we had that shot of Mattia Binotto basically going, now. But yeah, it's bad when an Italian starts finger wagging. So to see that at the end of the race, it was like watching an angry parent or something tell off a little child. This might go down like a stale bread sandwich, but I thought at some points today, Leclerc sounded like a right entitled little brat on the radio. A bit controversial, I know, but I don't care. There were some points where he was coming across and saying, "You need to get signs out of the way. You need to do this. You need to do that." Sounding like he had ideas somewhat above his station. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing exactly what he said, but there were several points where he was saying, he was saying, "Oh, you need to get Carlos to speed up." Saying, I can go and win this. I can do this. I can do that. All the rest of it, and it sounded like he was chucking his toys out the cockpit a bit. So it was also nice to see. It was nice to then see Sainz overtake him on track for the win as well.
Yeah, I think I think maybe Charles has gone too long without finding out the hard lesson that everyone learns when they drive for Ferrari, and that nobody is bigger than the prancing horse. Nobody. Fernando Alonso found that out the hard way, and Charles Leclerc probably needs to find out that way too. Then again, bearing in mind that he was losing probably quite a lot of downforce off that front wing end plate with a bit of damage, and still putting in fastest laps and things that I definitely couldn't do even with a fully functioning F1 car. Maybe he did have a little bit of a point, but I think you are right. If you want those opportunities, you got to go and take them, and he didn't. Following that, we have the ever-present Fernando Alonso in 5th place. He's consistently been up there, Sophia, and it's kind of no surprise to always see him. Like I remember a few years ago, Christian Horner said it back in 2012, about 10 years ago, when it was just like, because it's Fernando, he'll always be on the podium. And then in this case, he's always in the top 5.
Yeah, I mean, he might take over George's streak of being the most consistent driver in top 5. Who knows? I mean, we've said this on multiple podcasts on here and everything F1. Alpine is probably the silent drivers. Like, obviously not so much Ocon today, given his own kind of DNF, which we'll explain later. But Alpine are just steadily quiet. And, like, he was in the battle, the 4-car battle, in that 10-lap race towards the end. Like, he was catching up to Hamilton and Charles and Perez. And, like, it got to the point that almost he could have overtaken and even made podium as well. I think he said on post interview after the race, like, it was better than what he expected. He was expecting like P7, P8 for the team, obviously finishing P5. He was a second out as well from Charles as well. They are good. They are surprisingly good. I see them still as mid-level because obviously they are 4th, I believe, in the constructors now because of today. I'm not entirely sure, but they are 4th or 5th in constructors, so they're still mid-team, but they're still kind of catching up. Maybe not to where Red Bull and Ferrari are, but like could be very close to Mercedes towards the end of the season. But it's Alonso as well. Like, he's just come out of all guns blazing this season. I don't know if it's the new regulations and the new car is like pretty much kicking him into second gear for it. Excuse my pun. But like, it just seems so much, it's adding up so much better for Alonso this season, which part of me is happy for it because it's good for the team and good for him as a driver, but then it also makes me still question and worry about Piastri as well, because the question of if Alonso was going to do bad this season or like average, Piastri might have come in, but now that Alonso's doing so well, it's more and more unlikely we will see him obviously in the Alpine. He might go Williams, he might go somewhere else, we don't know, but like it was still a glimmer of hope I was hoping for to see Piastri in the team that he's actually the reserve driver for. But it's just been good for Alonso. Like I said, he was expecting P7 or P8 and finished in P5, could have been P4, could have even been P3 towards the end. Good battling on some of those last kind of corners in the last 10 laps. But yeah, good race for him. Maybe not so much the team because of Ocon's DNF due to fuel issues. I think it was announced fuel pump issues. But yeah, really good for him for sure.
Yeah, we're fast approaching the time where we'll be in 30 years' time and we'll be talking about the 70-year-old young driver Alonso keeping out F2 drivers from a Formula One seat. After that, but at Alonso's former team, we have Lando Norris from McLaren. Philip, I think it's probably a good thing to say that Lando Norris has actually had a kind of uneventful race, unless I'm just missing anything that he did today.
I think the action for him came during with the safety car, one of the safety cars, where I guess he got let out behind Alonso there after his initial battle with Lewis. He was in his own world basically for a good amount of the race, holding up the honor for McLaren on a pretty brutal day for them in terms of motorsports today, based on what's going on the IndyCar side. The fact is, Lando, of course, the energy that he has, of course, wanting to do well in front of his own crowd was there. The fact that he didn't get beheaded by Daniel on Friday from whatever the bouncy ball which has been made into a meme. That aside, I mean, I'm surprised he didn't have to go and get checked out or anything, because it seemed like he took his face off and he might have been in concussion protocol. There's been hits that you would wonder about how many G's he took right to the face. I'm like, that's the one way for Daniel to go and actually beat Lando, just go and take his head off. And he couldn't do it anyway. Lando did a great job this weekend, not only in qualifying, he was able to hold his own in the race. And right now, of course, the battles with Alpine. Sophia was talking about that. The fact is, they have a 6-point lead. So fundamentally, that's what it is in regards of 4th and 5th in the constructors. Lando right now is 7th in the World Championship. The gap, of course, I think it was a much closer gap to Lewis prior to today. But now his battle is more with Bottas, Ocon, and Alonso, really. He has a huge, the gap is 30 points of Alonso, but I think that's really where the mix is there. And, Lando's just continuing to show why he's a lead dog there, and they have to find, they're going to end up having to find somebody else for the other seat, I think. And, a solid run, making the most of their situation there. And they're hoping for better days ahead, I think, trying to get themselves into the top 3 battle, but there's still work to do. So we'll see what happens with that. But Lando, it looks like the Lando of last year at times, where he was really, really fast and may have contended for wins or had a chance to win. He looks like that guy again. I think there's, some of the crashes and some of the DNFs that kind of affected him. Well, I think he's back, and it was a positive performance here this whole entire weekend.
Yeah, you could have been forgiven for thinking there was a cult of Lando with some of the chants from the stands there. Right, so we have the World Championship leader. Bad day for Verstappen, Tom?
Well, it wasn't ideal, was it? Let's be fair. Yeah, not a brilliant day out in the office. I think yesterday was perhaps a bit of an omen of what today was going to be. Yesterday he set 3 fastest sectors in quali, but still didn't stick on the front row. Well, didn't stick on pole, stuck on the front row, and lost out to his former teammate. It's easy to say what if. Life would be easier if we could say what if. Had there not been the red flag at the start, I think he'd absolutely mug Sainz to begin with, and I, in my opinion, don't forget this is just one man's opinion. I suspect that if he would have, if the race would have sort of continued as normal, had there not been that horrendous crash with Guan Yu Zhou, I strongly suspect that Max would have settled into a rhythm out in front. He wouldn't have been riding the curb so aggressively because he didn't need to try and catch up or make up places or whatever. He could have just backed off a bit and done a bit of a Sunday drive. But that was not the case. We had the red flag, we had the hour's delay or so, and then we came back in, and both Sainz were on the same tyre this time round. Like I said earlier, Sainz said, "No, this is mine." Blah blah blah. Took it, held the lead, and then obviously, Max being Max. He was absolutely determined to get back in front, which he's a racing driver. He's world champion. What to expect? And he just rode the curb too hard. We'll talk about the sausage curb later on, I imagine. But he rode the sausage curb too hard. It ruined the underneath of his car, which ruined the ground effect, which ruined his race. I got to be honest. When I heard him say, "Oh, puncture," when I heard him say, "Oh, I think it's a puncture," I was watching him come in, and I was thinking, "Doesn't look like a puncture." I thought, because if it was a slow puncture, he wouldn't be going that slowly immediately. And when he came into the pits, he's obviously lost a lot of pace. So I think maybe the sidewall's gone or something. But when he pitted, I was looking, I was thinking, I don't think so. And then he was slow again when he was coming out. He's complaining about the rear. So I thought, so initially I thought maybe a push rod or a track rod had gone. But no, there was nothing. And then, then we heard from from his race engineer JP that he'd ruined the floor. So yeah, I mean, you can only blame himself. He pushed too hard and he paid the price for it. I get he's a racing driver, and obviously, someone like Max, they want to win. They want to win every race. We know what he's like with that, but he should have really just eased off a bit. Tried to play the strategy game, and maybe he'd have ended up better than 7th. He was 7th, wasn't he, today?
Yes, it was, yeah.
Yeah. And I think 7th is a bit of an overachievement for today. I think he was lucky to even finish in the points at all, given how much pace he was losing, and I think the safety car saved him a bit.
Yeah, it was a weird. I guess it must be difficult. I guess just to realize exactly what it is, particularly when you're in the heat of the moment. And it did look weird when he came into the to the pit limiter line and locked everything up. But I just want to provide an alternative view that I think that honestly Red Bull has done the best out of a bad situation, and that Ferrari have somehow managed to win the race and do a terrible situation. Maybe that's just what their performance has let them up to this far. But yeah, no, it's not done great. Fighting with Max Verstappen with his severely damaged car, which I think puts makes an important point about how much you have to look after your equipment this year. The underfloor was already pretty important, and now it's super important, it seems. That Red Bull went from being a championship winning car that it looked like to dealing with a Haas. Sophia, we've got Mick Schumacher, who first points.
Yeah, ecstatic to say the least. I kept on saying in the group chats, oh my god, Mick's in 9th, Mick's in 8th, Mick's in 10th, double Haas. Oh my god, it's gonna be double Haas points. It was just such a crazy race for them as well. They were how they didn't get caught up in the accident in the first lap. That was a big thing that I was just kind of shocked, given that obviously they have been quite unlucky being kind of caught into other people's situations and everything. But those last couple of laps, the battle, even towards right at the end, the last corner as well between Max. I mean, the joke's it's not the first time we've seen a Schumacher Verstappen battle. It brought back memories of many years past. But I'm so happy. We've said this multiple times. Mick needed points. This is a crucial factor. He's finally scored his first ever F1 points. Now every driver on the grid has had F1 points either last season or this season or previous seasons. It's now kind of setting a tone. Gunther said in post-race as well, they're happy for the points, but now they kind of need to reel it back, saying, right, it's not a given that we're going to get points every weekend or double points every weekend. We still would like to get points, but it's not a necessity. But I think it's helped Mick kind of ease off a little bit of the pressures as well, because obviously, like I said, we've said he needs the points. He's the only driver without points. Second year compared to second-year drivers like Yuki and first-year drivers like Zhou Guanyu, who have had points already this season. It was definitely needed. I'm hoping we can continue seeing points here and there for Haas, because they did come in with upgrades as well this season, this race at Silverstone as well. So I'm hoping that these are the upgrades that they needed, and we can start seeing it again. Kevin as well, finishing P10, double Haas points. That's also a great feat to have. And they definitely need it, given the unlucky runs that they've been having these last couple of races with engine problems, DNFs, just running out of the races due to simple, stupid mistakes. But yeah, absolutely ecstatic for Mick. Definitely deserved it, with coming from such a low place in qualifying. Both of them come from such a low place in qualifying, albeit a few of the drivers with the DNFs kind of helped that make possible. But it was just so good to see and well needed for the team. Hopefully that boosts his morale going into Austria and going into the rest of the season.
Yeah, 100%. I think Haas have to, as you say, feel the happy feelings. You got double points finish. And enjoy that. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and rein it in and take a minute and move on to the next one and hopefully build on it in a sort of more constructive way. One thing I would say I was very happy to see in Schumacher's battling just quickly is that no silly mistakes when battling Verstappen. Admittedly Verstappen's got one hand tied behind his back with a bit of an unstable car, but no silly mistakes, not running into the back of him, not doing things that four-time world champion Sebastian Vettel managed to do going into club corner. Really, really mature, and I hope that we see more of that. Something I also kind of hope we see more of is Sebastian Vettel in at least ninth place or better. Phil, to go from a great start, terrible qualifying, to a really great first start, and then you get put back to right where you were beginning. Absolutely amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, considering where they are relative in the pecking order, and to be in the next to last row yesterday with no pace and mixed conditions. Not only was his great flow working, his driving's ability was back to the great Sebastian Vettel, minus running into somebody, of course, in the first corner. But he does drive for Aston Martin. So he has a very low bar to measure to. He was able to go and get a couple of points for them. Their battle, of course, is with Haas and with Williams in regards to constructor standings. They're now the Haas gets the double points, which we'll get into, and they overtake Aston Martin today, but it's only 2 points. So. And AlphaTauri is only 7 points ahead of them. So actually, in all, and I didn't know that was the case now, and then I just checked it out. So AlphaTauri, Haas, and Aston Martin are actually in a battle. So, for Vettel to make the most out of that situation, positive weekend, a home race for the team. It may have not been his best performance at the start of the race, but by the end of the race, taking what happened and what had gone on outside of them to go and get points is a good result for them, considering that their car is probably no better than the 8th best car on the grid right now. So getting a 9th place finish isn't really all that bad.
Yeah, it's a great result. Again, as we talked about it a little bit earlier, but Tom, we have Kevin Magnussen in 10th place, rounding out our point scorers. Again, a great thing to have happen for Haas.
Yeah, Haas posted on their social media. They said something like, "We've waited 3 years to say this, but double points for Haas," and it's like, yeah, it's been a little while coming. A bit of an element of fortune, obviously, with people retiring and all the rest of it. But K-Mag beat the new go to the grid Latifi, so he's credit where it's due. But no, yes, it is nice to see Haas back in the points, and like I said yesterday on the show, they've somewhat over-promised and under-delivered this year, and qualifying yesterday was no exception, with them both out in Q1. However, we see them both in the points today, and we see them both in the points on merit as well. It's just good for Haas. I think they need it, to be honest. They need this sort of almost sort of confidence boost, you could call it, because they started the season with so much promise, and K-Mag was P5 on the in the first race in Bahrain, and then they've sort of just been. They've been a bit of a sort of downward spiral from there. They've had some unfortunate reliability issues with the Ferrari power units, and obviously Mick's had a few accidents and all the rest of it, and missed out on points a few times. But no, they've done it. It's what they need. And hopefully it means they'll start to move up the constructors table, because I don't think 9th is an accurate representation of where that team is. Given Aston bloody Martin are ahead of them in the constructors, talk about winding you up. If you got Lance bloody Stroll ahead of you, in the championships, that's got to sting. So it's good to see them back in the points, and I hope that they can carry this momentum, and I also hope that they can take some lessons learned from this weekend, both the good lessons in the sense, obviously, double points, woohoo, let's all go have a party, but also some lessons learned from qualifying where they didn't do so. I know it was wet, but just take some lessons learned. Look at how they did so well in Canada. In qualifying anyway. Obviously, the race less said the better. But just take the positives that they've got, build on it, and then get that over into the rest of the season. Because this was race number 8 of the season, I think. And we've got 9, 10, 9. I don't know. Don't care. Do care actually, but thank you, Sophia. Yes, race 9. So we're just over a third of the way into the season now, Haas need to finish higher than 9th in the constructors this year. They need to beat Aston Martin and Williams at the very least, because they are a midfield team and they've proved that today. But they just need to be more consistent. And I'm not saying them to qualify on the third row of the grid every weekend. That's not going to happen. But they need to be getting more consistently. They need to be consistently getting points, whether that's one driver or both of them. They need to just keep chipping away at it. And today is a good start of that for the rest of the season.
Yeah, 100%. It's a really consistent day for them. After that, just outside the point, we have Lance Stroll. He's not far outside the point. He's only a couple of seconds away. It's kind of, I don't know, kind of an anonymous performance. Just slipped under the radar, which is probably as much as can be said for Stroll, because but basically he just followed in Vettel's footsteps and he did well out of it, didn't it, Sophia?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one was watching the replays of the accident in first corner. How, between both accidents as well, like not just the one, but both, how did he come out unscathed? Because he was bottom of the grid as well. He was starting at the bottom. And it's Stroll as well. You would expect him to be nicked by somebody, spin by somebody, suffer a puncture or something to the wings. He had no damage whatsoever that entire race, and just a quiet race from him, which is what I think Aston Martin would like to see from him, and not see him spin out every once in a while or kind of take stupid risks with other drivers. It was good. It was quite close as well. He was battling with Kevin and Latifi for that final spots for the points for the last couple of laps as well. But yeah, it was quite quiet. Good. I mean, good for him, because it's what he needs to kind of prove himself as a driver. Again, I hate it. It sounds bad, but the only reason why he has finished up a little bit higher was due to the amount of DNFs, I think. Given that he was back of the grid, he didn't take any major risks. I don't think he even did any key overtakes. From what I could see on commentaries and was seen on video and clips and everything, there wasn't any kind of key overtakes for positions. He just kept his head down and let other people make more of the mistakes for him to keep on getting ahead. And sometimes it works in his favor, as of today. And we've seen that in other races over the years. When other drivers make mistakes, it's to the benefits of other teams. But yeah, it was good. I think Lauren said on the grid walk with Martin, they know what the problems were yesterday, but then did not want to explain anything more from it. So I think there's going to be some upgrades coming into Austria, maybe, or a few more upgrades coming in the next couple races before the summer break. But yeah, unscathed, no crash, close to the points, decent race for him.
Yeah, very, very sort of boring is good. After that, we've, I can't believe I'm saying this, but we have Nicolas Latifi in 12th place, which, and someone who was fighting Max Verstappen, who was looking like he was going to be threatening Max Verstappen at a certain point. He kind of got, Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying that, Phil.
Well, I would say that this is probably the best performance of Nicolas Latifi's career in terms of a full race weekend, minus, of course, getting the points at Hungary last year. And the fact is, he qualified in Q3. Granted, of course, mixed conditions. His teammate, of course, as well, much more highly rated, as it's been his whole entire career, and he goes and out qualifies him and gets into Q3, of course, while Albon falls out in Q1. He runs well, and he was in the points for a good amount of the race, and actually didn't look all that bad. He actually didn't look like, typical of what him and his buddy Lance look like most of the time, which is just field fillers. He actually looked like he belonged out there. The safety car probably was one of the people that was most affected. I think I would say was Nicolas Latifi in that spot, because he could have possibly gotten points there. And you consider that Williams only has 3 points. They're likely going to finish on the bottom of the table, of course, but in the grand scheme of things, every point matters. I think Nicolas Latifi felt, considering the circumstances of what had gone on and how the race had been for the most part, I think he would have wanted a point from today. Unfortunately, he fell just a little bit short of that. But when you consider where his place is on the grid at the moment and the likelihood of him holding his seat, there was, of course, the rumors that he wasn't even going to have a seat this weekend. So, okay, fine. Well, now we probably see him go through the rest of the summer. But it's these kind of performances that will keep him in the car for the remainder of the year. If that's the choice that Williams and Dorilton make, he needs to do that. Those kind of performances. It's not going to fall into their favor like it did today with the amount of DNFs and amount of stuff that went on, but he looked like he looked. That was one of his best performances, honestly. I usually slag him. I know I heard it yesterday on the qualifying show, and Jawad said that too. And I'm like, I'm good for slagging him too. It's pretty easy. It's not that hard to do, but credit where credit's due for a car that's not that good to go and make the most out of that situation, possibly go and get points. Credit to them and what they did, and we'll see what they have in store as the season goes on. I don't know what that really entails, but I would venture to say we'll probably know what he has probably by Belgium and the post-summer swing, if he really is going to stay in Formula One.
Absolutely. Speaking of staying in Formula One, we've got Daniel Ricciardo, which is a horrible prospect, really. With Daniel Ricciardo in 13th place, miles off, absolutely miles off for no real reason. And this is again, it's another poor weekend for someone who up until relatively recently we were thinking was sort of F1's best and brightest. Tom.
Oh boy, I mean, how many times are we going to be having this conversation about Danny Rick? We've oh jeez, we've said, oh, it takes him a while to bed into a team, and we saw that, and then obviously last year there was the whole, new cars next year, he'll be on top of it. He's not. And in a race where we had how many finishes did we have? 14.
Yeah,
I think we finished 13th after starting P14. Crash, we had 2 Haas in the points. We had Latifi running 8th. And you can't get a McLaren into the points when your teammate qualified P6 and P6 and finished.
Yeah, P6.
Finished P5, I think.
No, finished P6.
I did finish P6. Sorry, yeah. Mate, you're on borrowed time. Danny, I like you, but your days are numbered, love. And it's such a shame because there was one that hark back to 2014 to 2017. bit of 2018 when he won in Monaco and got redemption. It was like, he was, everybody loved him. He was doing bits in the Red Bull. He was always king of the late breakers or the rest of it. He was happy, he was cheery. But he's been comprehensively beaten by Lando ever since he's been at McLaren. And I know McLaren have the option to take him up for next year. Today has not helped him at all. I know some people are going, but you win the last race in McLaren. Yes, I know that. But let's be fair, Lando should have won that race. And he only won it because Verstappen and Hamilton had a little smooch at turn 1 in Monza. Well, the cars did anyway. And he effectively inherited first place. That was one of his stronger weekends, mind you. He has had some strong weekends. But today, just nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. I mean, I don't even recall seeing him on the TV. I forgot he existed. He was just, I looked at the standings afterwards and went, oh yeah, Ricciardo, lol. And yeah, it's just, yeah. I'm trying not to be negative. I'm not doing a very good job because what more can you say? It's not like he's 22. It was his birthday on Friday, which confused the heck out of me because his birthday is almost always in Austria, which is always the first weekend of July. I'm at Silverstone, and I'm just like, where? So it's not helping my ADHD, but it's just, I don't know how much longer McLaren can stomach this, and if they're going to want to be competitive, they need both cars regularly scoring points. And if you've got one driver who's already got a podium this year and has been pretty consistent in the points, and you've got the other driver who just cannot make it happen, if he was at Red Bull and this was happening, he'd have been out by now. Just putting it out there. And, McLaren, prestigious name in F1. A lot of people do a lot of things to drive in that seat.
Yeah, Daniel Ricciardo seems to have gone the opposite way to Perez. Ending up in a big team and not really performing. Daniel Ricciardo, sorry to say, but he's gone from last of the late breakers to last of the race finishers, really. Last that we've got the last of the usual run of the finishers. We have Yuki Sonoda. Is the best he could have done given his race start, Sophia?
I think so. I think a lot of people might have forgotten, but he also had a 5-second time penalty in that race due to spinning pretty much in sync with Gasly on the restart after the safety car. And even the damage again, he was caught up in that first first turn incident with George and all that. So I was surprised even that the car was even going to be able to get out to begin with after the restart because it looked quite bad. But by the gods of the mechanics and the engineers getting it out in time for it. But yeah, he was also quite quiet. Like after the first turn incident and then that in sync running with Gasly, because both of them were running in the points as well for some time, and then randomly Yuki decided to do a sync spin out with Gasly and then kind of dropped them both down, and then obviously Gasly retired towards the end of the race. Other than those two situations and then the 5-second penalty, there's nothing really that happened with Yuki. There was barely any time that he was caught up to a driver, was able to do overtaking. I mean, the only overtaking that really happened was blue flags, if that was the case for the rest of the race. But I mean, he kept it out. His damage wasn't caused by him specifically. He just got caught up in a bad situation. So he did better than he has in other races and such. But yeah, it was just quiet for him. I mean, kept it on. I think it was more data collection towards the end of the race than anything else for the team. But yeah, not a good day for AlphaTauri to begin with, which is compared to how better the Red Bull were as well this weekend. Quite a bit of a difference between the two teams.
Yeah, 100%. Really big gap between the two teams abnormally. So, because you'd say the AlphaTauri is actually pretty quick. Now we move on to those who didn't make the checkered flag. We have Esteban Ocon, who before we'll talk about pre the issue that he had. Obviously, I think that's only fair. What would you make of Esteban's performance this weekend, Phil?
I mean, I have to go back honestly and check on his qualifying. I'll just take that second here. I mean, he was in he only made it into Q2, so he didn't have a great start practice wise. I don't it looks like he was kind of periphery top 10 kind of guy. Not as fast as Fernando this weekend. And in the end, he didn't even get, he was one of 10 guys who didn't even go out and practice one. So, it just wasn't his weekend, unfortunately for Esteban Ocon, but he was in a position based on who was left to get points. If he had, he was racing Verstappen, which is always great. Because they have such great magnetism with each other, the fact of the matter is he passed him and left him looking like a lamppost or a light post, and then next thing you know, his car's stopping because it's like shutting off or doing whatever it is, and Alpine doing Alpine things, and unfortunately for Ocon, he basically altered the entire race. It would have been I personally would have loved to seen what it would have happened if it had went to the checkered flag. I think I wonder about that in certain ways, but I also look at how that the finish happened because their engine quit. It's something we're going to have to look at. I think it's going to become a big issue here post summer break with the engine penalties and having to take grid penalties and the whole bit. Having to lose power unit components in this spot is bad, especially when you had nothing to show for the weekend, really. So just kind of a throwaway weekend for Esteban Ocon, but there was a time last year where it seemed like he was getting routinely beaten by Fernando Alonso on a weekly basis, and then Hungary happened. So, so the fact is Ocon, they have their battle with McLaren. That's what they have to do. So get his car back on track for next week, of course, give him new power unit components, put himself in a position so that they can compete against their actual battle, which is against McLaren in constructors.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I'm just looking for what happened to Pierre Gasly. I don't actually know why he retired on lap 26 halfway through the race.
The contact that all the stuff that he had with Yuki, didn't that have something to do with it? And then maybe there might have been power unit stuff too going on, or some sort of like drive line issue too.
Quite possibly. He did get a fair whack on the rear end. Again,
and he really didn't have a lot of pace, to be fair. I'm sorry I'm interrupting, Tom, on your spot here, but it wasn't like they had any pace. Maybe they're just preserving the engine, at that time, because with Yuki, it's lucky he finishes races, so they wanted him to get laps. In the case of Gasly, this year has been a disaster for as good as the last couple of years have been for him, or since he came back to AlphaTauri. This year, they're just nowhere. And now they're in a battle in that back midfield for constructors. And so
he might have had underlining damage because obviously he was caught up with George and Joe as well. And it could have been some damage that was not seen to begin with by the engineers when everybody was in the pit lane, and probably might have caught up to it. So it could be that as well.
Yeah. Right. But I mean, to be honest, it doesn't really matter. He had a bad time. He spun with Sonoda. That's all we really remember. I don't know if Bottas was caught up in the accident at
No.
turn 1.
No.
Do we know how he was? He wasn't doing particularly amazing, but do we know why he retired in?
All I heard was it was mechanical issues.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, again, that's the Ferrari power unit, which isn't great considering everything that's happened with it.
Joe had fallen out of points position a few races ago, similar kind of thing. So
it also could be because of Bottas being the start of the second part of the collision as well on the first lap, braking it too hard as well, because he saw the whole thing as well. And looking at the replays, it was like literally Bottas was braking so hard, hence why Vettel came behind Alex, and that could have had some kind of mechanical issues, because obviously if you're braking so quick on the first start, he had a good run off the line as well. He was doing quite well, making some paces above, but had to slam on brakes pretty much to avoid kind of any issues with that first part of the turn 1 incident.
Yeah, of course. Which I think neatly brings us on to obviously the thing that turned this race on its head and means that we're doing this at 7 o'clock, not 6, is the accident between, pretty much anyone in the back half of the field. I'm going to kind of open up this up a little bit more rather than going by individual driver. Now, I'm going to say, Tom, would you say that this accident was anyone in particular's fault? Or do you think that this is probably just the natural sort of the logical extreme of a first corner incident?
We're getting something when I start adjusting my mic because I'm trying to lean forward. Nobody is to blame for this accident. It is an accident. It is a horrific accident, but it is an accident. An accident implies there is no one primarily or wholly to blame. If you had to apportion blame, you would have to point the finger at both Pierre Gasly and George Russell. Because Latifi, Goat Tifi, got a lightning start, went through that gap between Joe and Russell, who both had poor starts. And Sophia made a very good point in our EF1 chat earlier. She said a lot of people had very poor starts on the first time round today. And Gasly saw a gap and went, oh, yeet, up through the middle. Why wouldn't you? Because you've just seen someone do it in front of you. And then Karun Chandok made a very good point on the Sky Pads where he said that Gasly had this horrible moment where he realised George was closing the gap, coming off his line. It was closing the gap. And Gasly, it was either do I get pinched, do I brake and get rear-ended? What do I do? He got caught. And then we all saw what happened. So, no, I don't think anybody is to blame. And I stand by that. With the other accident that we saw, so the album sort of concertina effect, again, I don't think there's anybody to blame because it was an accident. Bottas started the chain reaction because he was avoiding a collision. And Albon was also avoiding the collision, but Vettel obviously couldn't see that far in front of him, so he didn't know what was going on. And as soon as he realised, we saw him attempt to brake, we saw him stamp on the anchors, but obviously he was too close, he locked up, he hit Albon, and then we all saw what happened after that. So as far as I'm concerned, both of them, nobody's to blame. They were just terrible, terrible accidents. And I just want to say, I'm sure we'll get into this in a moment, I'm so pleased to see that Zhou Guanyu is okay. Because when they cut to that wide shot, as they came out the first corner and I saw that car scooting on its roof, I felt sick. And having seen the picture of that car wedged in between the fence and the barrier, and you can see Zhou is in there because you can see his helmet still in the cockpit. Oh, God alive, that gave me horrific flashbacks to Bahrain 2020, or Sakia 2020. thank heavens for the safety improvements that we've had, and to see that a driver can. Well, he didn't quite walk away, but he didn't have to be airlifted. He walked onto the stretcher and he was in the paddock afterwards. Albon got taken to. I think he got taken to Coventry Hospital as a precaution, but apparently he's doing okay as well. So I just want to say I'm so relieved to see that both drivers, well, all drivers involved, are okay. Probably a bit mentally scarred and shaken up, but nobody is seriously injured, and that is the most important thing.
Yeah, it's a good jumping off point. I would say that, like I say, as Thomas said, that both drivers are okay. Zhou was back at the track already, was up and about and talking to media and things like that. So that is a testament to, again, the strength of a formula, strength and how they build a Formula One car. The one thing I would say is, what can we learn from this? I mean, what other things that F1 is going to have to look at, particularly around track safety? Because I think there's always something when there's a big accident. There's always something to learn from it. We saw that car skid along on its roll hoop for quite a while, to the point where there wasn't one anymore. We then saw going into the gravel where, I think, Sophia, do you think we need to investigate maybe the gravel trap? Because we not only need to look at the thing of how did that car get from in front of a set of tyre barriers to behind a set of tyre barriers?
Yeah, so it was where the gravel and the off-road met, and because Zhou already had damage, that's what allowed the car to flip more easily. And then by the looks of it, the replay, it looks like it was hit on an awkward angle of the car, which made them flip even more to go over the barriers. Thank God for how high that fence was, but there was photographers right behind there. Like, they literally were running because it was a split-second decision, and thank God that there was not much shrapnel damage or damage outside the car, because that could have hit somebody, that could have pierced somebody. There was a video I saw on Instagram, and it was like the people and the fans right next to it were like shielding each other, and even after the race you could see a big black spot. And thank God the car wasn't on fire as well, because if that car was on fire, this would have been a bigger, different story. Like, watching that gave me Grosjean flashbacks, because the fact that it took so long to hear anything, no radio, no communication, and even they purposely changed the angle of the TV formations that normally are quite wide. They cut it just to purposely show, not to show Zhou, made it so scary because she just didn't know what was going on. And like, even George Russell, like, obviously the minute his car stopped, he is running out, and he jumped onto the tire barriers to double check that if he was okay. It was so intense. And like Thomas said as well, like, I'm very happy that Zhou's okay. He was even joking with Stefano Domenicali towards the end of it. You saw on Sky Sports, it could have been a lot worse than it actually was. And that 100% goes down to the halo, which obviously came from the horrific accident with Jules. This is not the first time this weekend that the halo has been a life-saving effect. We saw it in F2, if anybody did watch it, with Dennis Hauger and Roy Nissany as well. That was another life-saving support of the halo, because otherwise it would have been Roy Nissany as well, who had serious damage, and we can discuss that a little bit later as well. But it needs to be investigated. I think it could be that the gravel was unlevel to the road, and that's probably one of the main things. And so they need to look into that. Also, maybe even change how the road is, to maybe even change it to a dirt road or a gravel trap road, because it is possible these cars can, well, not the F1 cars, but like the safety cars and support cars, they can get bigger wheels. They can work on the gravel. So we don't need these tarmacked roads everywhere if the cars can get to them in that kind of safe way, if that makes sense. But literally, like, my heart sank. Like I said, it gave back the flashbacks to Grosjean. Happy he's okay. I mean, hopefully he will be racing in Austria. I would like to see him race, but I mean, everyone can understand if he wants to take a week off and race in France for that. And even Alex Albon, actually, there's still no news about him. He was airlifted by helicopter out to a hospital, and I don't think he's been released yet. There's been no kind of communication on if he's been released, but he has been doing okay. But it was more preliminary checks. But the safety needs to be discussed throughout. That sausage curbs as well, which caused the F2 accident. It was a catalyst by the bad start to begin with. That was kind of the crucial factor. It wasn't one driver that had a bad start. I think it was like maybe 5 or 6 had a bad start off the line. Had it been one driver, we wouldn't. I personally don't think we would have this incident. But because we had most of the mid grid have the same bad start, it just was adding fuel to the fire pretty much. And like I said, I'm happy that Joe's okay and everything, and glad to see that he's all right, and hopefully with Alex Albon as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. The one thing I will say, I'm gonna kind of sort of slightly skip over Albon in that, I think we've covered what happened to it. What happened to him? Obviously, he's still in hospital, and we wish for him to have a speedy recovery from any health issues that he's currently suffering with. I think that he just got hit up the rear and was a bit of a pinball, unfortunately, from that. And there's nothing he could do. The thing that got to me is that we saw, obviously, Russell stopped on track, and the car wasn't that damaged. And as you say, Sophia, he ran across to check on Zhou Guanyu. Bearing in mind what happened, do you think? I think do we need to examine? I mean, it's a little in the weeds now, but do we need to examine, like, should he have been able to restart that race? Bearing in mind that obviously he did get outside assistance, but should he have got outside assistance? I think it might be a moot point, bearing in mind that he couldn't get the car restarted.
Yeah, if he had gotten his car restarted, that's where the problem. I mean, first of all, he did what, George Russell's part of why so many people are a fan of him. He cared more about, Zhou Guanyu in that spot, instead of thinking, I can get back to the pits if I can either bump start this thing or whatever. He went and did that. Once he got out of the car, he kind of lost control of the situation. He went and did the Dale Earnhardt thing, like circa Daytona 597, sees, I could get this fixed really quick if I go and do that, and then I can go and finish in the top 5 or 6 or something, which he probably would have, essentially, considering what happened the rest of the day. But he got out of the car. He went one way. Then he went across the other way and went to talk to his people, the Mercedes mechanics. Then he tried to come back. By the time you do all that stuff, I mean, God bless him. He seemed like he was like an 800-meter runner the way he was going today, or some sort of like runner who does the big marathons. They were going to put the car on one of the rollbacks at that point. If he could have gotten the thing started, we don't talk about this in that aspect of it. He got out of the car because he was thinking of his fellow driver. And that was the thing. It's unfortunate, he was doing what was right, honestly. The rest of the people that were involved in that crash were thinking about, other than Albon, of course, which also is one of his best friends. So he was probably worried about him too. They would have probably been able to go, but they couldn't restart it based on these rules. In the old days, like I was thinking about when Sophia and Tom were talking about it, I think of 2 incidents. I think of Martin Brundle's crash in Australia at the start of the 96 season in the Jordan, and he went and slid on his head and flipped over. Just thought of another one. I think there was the Gutierrez Alonso crash there back years ago at Australia. And then Michael Andretti at Mid-Ohio, which is interesting because they just had the IndyCar, or 2016, thanks. And Michael Andretti at Mid-Ohio back in like 96, 97 area, where he got launched over the back of a car and flipped through a sand trap. And that was back in the old days of IndyCars. Those, you look at the safety innovations all these years later, you're talking about 96 to now, you're talking about, 25, whatever, or more than that years. And it's nearly 30 years. And the fact is, it's so much progression. I mean, yeah, George couldn't restart the race. Back in the day, you'd have a third car. Now they don't have that. You essentially have a bare chassis, which has some parts, and you wouldn't be able to get that car ready in an hour. I mean, granted, I think these guys, these mechanics, the men and women who are working on these cars seem to be aliens, the way they're able to repair some of this damage and put things back together in an hour's time. But if they had figured out a way to put a car together in an hour, if they were allowed to, that might have been one of the greatest things I've seen since Audi went and replaced the back end of the R8 in like one lap and then put it back out there at Le Mans. But that wasn't to be. George, unfortunately, wasn't able to race. But in the end, hopefully all parties will be okay. We'll see what happens with Zhou Guanyu and Alfa Romeo. They're not one of the bigger teams, of course. That damage could be bad. Of course, Haas had to deal with that earlier this year a couple of times with Mick, and they had to keep him out for the race the next day. In this case, to have a week or 5 days to get ready for Austria, see if they're able to get that car back out there. And then in terms of Albon, I guess all their, I don't know how many of the bits are functional that were new, relative to them having bits to give to Latifi and Albon for next race. So the reality is what both Tom and Sophia and we are all thinking. I mean, the reality is it could have been a lot worse. We're grateful that they're all going to be hopefully okay, and it wouldn't have been that way back in the day for sure. But I think there are the amount of paved runoff areas. I mean, this stupid grade 1 garbage that they say, which is why you can't go to a lot of US circuits that are really good road courses instead of racing in a stupid marina in a parking lot in Miami. Like garbage like that, and then going in like maiming circuits to the point where you have like Hockenheim, which was a joke. And then you have Paul Ricard, which is one of the goofiest racetracks on planet Earth and could be like an acid trip. It's because they constantly pave all these runoffs. It's like, you don't need that. You have good guardrail technology. You have good wall technology with like safer barriers, a Tech Pro or whatever. Go and invest in that. Figure out ways. You have the best braking performance in these cars and in probably the LMDH hypercars, and these are the cars that usually race there. If there's plenty of motorsports vehicles that can run on tracks that don't have a whole lot of runoff area, then these cars can deal with that too. So I guess that's my aside in regards to constantly having miles and miles of paved runoff areas, which don't really take off any pace, especially when you're upside down. And if you don't have any brakes, you won't lose any pace either. So it's kind of interesting how that all works.
Yeah. Well, so we've sort of covered him. Is Albon, obviously. He's not classified, but he's classified as last. Unfortunately, it does mean that, as you say, Williams don't know how well their upgrade package worked. Bearing in mind they ran it in the wet and they ran it for about 300 meters, and that's all we know. So after that, we are going to go to our drivers of the day. Tom, who is your driver of the day?
Because there are a few in contention. I'm going to say Hamilton.
Oh, interesting.
In fact, people weren't expecting that one.
No. I didn't have that on my bingo card.
No.
Grid Talk Bingo, having Tom saying something good about Lewis is the same way as me seeing something positive about his guy. So it's that.
Exactly, swings and roundabouts.
Sophia, who's your driver of the day today?
I think I'm going to go with the one I voted for on the F1 one. I think Carlos Sainz.
Yeah, that's fair. And Phil, who's your driver of the day?
Well, I guess I might as well go and go with the 20% that said Checo Perez. I didn't want to go full homer with Lewis, so Tom helped me out with that. The next option was was Carlos Sainz because it's his first win, but Sophia got me on that one. So I'll just go with Checo because that's like one of his greatest performances other than his first win, which he came from tailback after getting involved in stuff early in the race and won because Mercedes screwed up George Russell's pit stop and then he got a cut tire. But so Checo Perez then getting a second place finish as the tea kettle's going off here in the corner.
Yeah, my dad has one of those. I'm gonna slightly cheat, but I know so I can do it. I'm gonna go with honourable mention for George Russell for actually, going and seeing if he could do anything to help, which is, we always want to commend that. But I think I'm actually gonna go with Leclerc as my driver of the day, who, with a broken end plate and ruined front downforce, actually managed to be putting in fastest laps and really making it a hard time for people to get past. I think he actually did a fairly good job, and the only reason he didn't have a good job was because he got kind of a bit stuffed on the on Ferrari's decision-making speed when it comes to a safety car. Otherwise, I think he'd have done a damn good job, and we might have had a completely different result. Equally as exciting of one of, I'm going to come in and say it's one of the most exciting races I've seen all year, if not the most. With the main show out of the way, though, we've got obviously lovely guests. So we, where can we find you, Phil?
I have to unmute myself. You can find me and my co-host Josh Fine on the Grip Strip podcast. We're basically anywhere you can find podcasts. We talk about all things motorsports, both here in the United States and abroad. We'll talk about Logan Sargent's first F2 win that took place. So first win for an American since Alexander Rossi in the number 2 series, the main feeder series in Formula One. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about all the racing that took place this weekend, not only in Formula One, but NASCAR, IndyCar, 4 wheels, 2 wheels, as long as it goes fast. You can listen to the Grip Strip podcast and we'll talk about it. I'm usually, I get sufficiently loaded at times, and then there's other times when I can stay a little more sober. Either way, you get the most of me. For the people that do want to listen to that, we are more long form. We kind of go over everything kind of a little more detail. So if you like to have a nice long podcast during your weekday while you're working, go and listen to us. You'll get a little bit of everything there. Thanks, Owain. Great job hosting, and glad to be a part of the Everything F1 crew for just a few hours time here with Tom and Sophia. So that was a great show today, and glad that everybody's okay. Isn't that right?
Yeah, and as you mentioned, we've got 2 people from the Everything F1 podcast. Who's going to do it this time? Where can we find the podcast?
I guess I will. I'll say
It's a standoff here. It's a standoff here.
Staring at each other.
Who wants to say the spiel?
Well, because it's a lot. So as mentioned, Everything F1, we have a website, which is www.everythingf1.com. We post daily opinion pieces, information, reviews about F1, F2, F3, FE, IndyCar, and W Series. We're on all social media at either Everything F1 or at Join EF1, and it's social media such as TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I think that's it off the top of my head. We also do have a podcast that gets live recorded every Tuesday night around 8:30 with special guests throughout the entire season. And then it is live. Well, it is dropped onto also podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple, iTunes on Wednesday morning middays.
Awesome. And I suppose I better do the promo for us, where if you are listening to Grid Talk, it's available on YouTube. Most episodes are recorded live as I stumble my way through this. Most episodes are recorded live like this one. This one went a bit long, but it's one of those races where it has to, as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, Verbal, Omni Studio, and Pocket Casts. Just search Formula One Grid Talk for our back catalogue of shows with previews and reactions to qualifying and race results. Please consider supporting the channel on Patreon so we can get mics, lights, and better recording equipment for our presenters. You can get your hands on some official Grid Talk merchandise, including our Champions range, f1chronicle.com/store. And make sure you make sure to subscribe so that you're the first to know when each new weekly episode is released. We will be back soon with plenty of more F1 content. Thank you very much for listening. If you stick around and if you're listening, we always do a post show where we're going to be talking about a little bit more about halos for fun. So that's a sneak preview. Come on, listen live. You want to if you're listening after the fact. Thank you for listening and goodbye. We are into the post show. We'll stick around for a little bit.
I guess I was so distracted by all the tires and wheels coming off at Moss Sport that I forgot to go and put all my social media handles, but it's okay. If you really want to find it, if they really want to find it, they'll find it.
Yeah.
There's this race has only gone on for 16 minutes, and there's been at least 2 wheels come off, 2 tires delaminate, the car that was running second. Yeah.
Is this NASCAR?
Race?
No, this is the IMSA race. At Moss Sport, because it's on right after the Indy cars here.
Indy finished quite quickly.
Well, yeah, they part of it, even with all the carnage that was going on, when they're on the main NBC, they are running against a very tight time frame. So they're trying to accelerate things for TV purposes. And that mainly it's because they have this race going on right now. They could have actually waited probably an extra 15 minutes and given us a little bit more post race, because they're just running into each other. But the NASCAR race is coming here shortly. But
Fair.
Yeah. So I guess if we're talking about the Halo, I mean, I don't know.
F2.
Every single time.
The
F2
race 2.
Bloody hellfire.
I just want to say that the Halo stopped 2 decapitations today, this week. Well, just today, actually, because there was no real hope left. It was gone.
Yeah. And I mean, the fire thing was the one point I think, Sophia, you made. I'm like, that's the thing that I didn't think about. I'm like, holy mother of God, if that had happened, we would have
wedged in there. Yeah,
we would have this race wouldn't have, in most cases, would have not have started again, because it would have been a bad situation. Thank God, whatever that safety too, whatever it is, because in the old days, with all the dragging and have much, I think the delamination of the car didn't have anything to do itself with, I guess, those key components, all the electronics and all the fluids that could have caught fire.
If anything, it was better that it was upside down, so you didn't have that dragging along the floor. Essentially being exposed.
Yeah, because then that would have caught fire too. It would have been closer to Grosjean's team.
They also traumatized, but because it was kids right there. Like some of the clips I was seeing, there was literally parents shielding their kids from the side of that.
There was someone at the base of the. If you look at the video, there's someone at the base of the grandstand, and they're just cowering because that's all you can do. I mean, I've just found a pit.
Well, there was photographers right there, like literally at that spot. There's a few photographers and marshals, and it's like you ducked. Like calls for strap on and all that.
It reminds me a lot of Alan McNish's crash at Le Mans in 2011, where he flipped over, and you just see bits going
people
everywhere.
Running for cover. And
there's not much you can do about it. By the way, one of the things, coming back to my point about how the Halo has literally saved 2 lives today, there is a photo on autosport.com of.
Is it a picture of Joe's car sideways wedged?
Yeah, just fully upside. No. This is the one of it still skimming on the floor, still on the track at this point.
And there's sparks coming off.
Completely upside down.
Yeah. It's scary, isn't it?
I mean, even F2's photo as well, Dennis Hogger and Roy Nissany as well. That was literally like from almost giving back like Monza vibes, but even a lot worse because it was literally over it because Dennis Hogger curb went off by the sausage curbs and literally kind of hit Nissany. Mind you, Nissany did push Dennis off to begin with as well.
Yeah, yeah. And if you look at Roy Nissany, it's not the first time he's pushed a driver off like that, and it nearly ended.
It could have been any driver, though.
Yeah,
it could have been any F2 driver.
True, yeah, true. And
I think Nissany is at fault for coming on the track, for coming back on the track the way he did, and then making a defensive move that he shouldn't have made because it was unpredictable.
Oh.
Yeah.
But
I think he's about to run out. I'm sorry, he's about to run out of his eligibility in this series. So thankfully, we won't have to deal with him after this year. Kind of like what's his name who went to LMP2.
Tictum?
No, the what's the guy who had the KFC sponsorship from
Sean
Asia? Yeah, Sean Galal. Yeah.
But even that sausage cup as well, that seemed high. I mean, I sat in the press conference with the F2 drivers, and all of them kind of said like they understand that the curbs are there. They've been there for years. It makes sense, but like some of them kind of were against how high it was. But then also at the same time, Dennis kind of came in at the wrong time as well. He could have easily gone off, just a little bit off more for where the curbs were, not come on to where the curbs were. But the fact that the car just literally like rocketed up, and it could have been any other car that Dennis would hit. It just turned out to be Nissany who pushed him up to begin with. It's not. I don't like the word payback or karma or anything, but it's literally the fault of his own actions in that kind of sense, in the nicest way possible.
I know what you mean.
Had he not pushed Dennis to begin with, it would have not happened. But glad that he's safe because it was literally the images of it, because it wasn't just the tires, it was both tires and the main body of the car that was over Nissany.
And when you saw it like go over the top of the car like that, it was just like, oh god,
could skim the head, because Nissany's quite tall as well. He's one of the tallest drivers on the grid, so the fact that the halo is probably just maybe like a couple inches above it, madness.
But this brings up a sort of wider question, or not question, but a wider topic around the sausage curbs, and I just want to sort of throw this out as a general talking point. We've seen, obviously, yesterday we saw, or this morning, we saw the sausage curbs, almost cause effectively almost caused a fatality in F2. We saw it in F3 and Monza in 2019 when, who was it? Was it Peroni got launched off? I can't remember which driver it was, but in F3 in 2019, there was a driver, it was the weekend after Hubert passed. There was a driver who got launched off one of the curbs in Monza in one of the Lesmos, and his car just absolutely, just did a pirouette and landed in the,
it's an airplane crash.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Yeah. And then, without getting into everything that happened last year, if you look at Monza, look at the accident between Max and Lewis in turn one. If Max wouldn't have gone over that, irrespective of whether he should or should not have been there, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the sausage curbs. Exactly. And you saw it when Max was going through that turn. He was all right. Then he hit the sausage curb, and his car went over the top of Hamilton.
Like these things
if it wouldn't have been a sausage curb.
I mean, Abby Eason's got a fractured spine because of it.
Yeah. Burton Mylander in the safety car was on two wheels in this weekend as well, because he went over the curbs. I'm for the curbs, but I feel like they were way too high with how low these cars are now.
They're too aggressive.
Some of them are good. Some of them are good, but not all of them.
There's other, they have rumble strips or something. You put a rumble strip of some sort in that spot, and then you have right next to it, you basically put, how many meters wide of a rumble strip or something that would be kind of like, because I know they have because I'm thinking of some of the places where we have with curbing and whatever, and it's not, the sausage curbs are only really with the Formula One grade 1 type circuits. We don't have that as much here, but it's like, it's a safety issue.
I don't like the curbs, but I don't know how we fix them because you need something that's just like, if you go over it, it causes, it causes you to have an issue. It does, inherently slow you down, similar to the way the sausage curves were used at the last chicane at Montreal. But I think we need to find a way to have the curbs not be launching cars because it's getting silly, and I think one day it's going to cause an issue because you just think that one day we're not going to get lucky. It's so I think they need. We almost had it.
We almost had it this morning.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm for the curbs. I just feel like they're a little bit too high for now. But like, I would not change them for the rumble strips because the rumble strips don't do anything. Like these curbs have been there for ages. Like they have not been ones that are like newly put in because of track limits, like how you have with rumble strips or like the lines. They have been at these tracks more consistently. It's also sometimes, I hate to say, the driver's inexperience as well, because they should know not to enter with the rumble curve. Look at Dennis Hauger. He was a couple inches. He could have easily just stayed off and not gone in through the sausage curve. He could have kind of moved to the left a little bit longer and joined the track safer than what it was. There is discussion, but like it's the same with all kind of major incidents and crashes. Like it will be investigated. I doubt they're going to change anything besides maybe lower the curbs, maybe a couple inches or centimeters down. But the curbs will probably stay because they've been the most consistent way to monitor track limits and not going too far off the track to gain an advantage compared to the rumble strips, compared to just normal monitoring that you do have at some of the races.
Yeah, I don't think there's an easy solution as well, because I was thinking maybe something that would cool the tire down, or like put like paint on the tire, so it would just be like, so it would be like or just a deterrent, so it would just be like, okay, if you go over this, you're gonna, obviously have a worse, you're gonna damage your tires in some way to do it.
I reckon just put stingers out there. If you go too wide, it goes wide.
Just put spikes out there.
You get a puncture, just like I showed you, didn't I?
Instead of you have track limit things, go and drive over it. Yeah.
That would work for Verstappen though, because it means that you'd have no one else to race against. Because it's just like, oh look, I pushed someone out onto the spike strips.
Exactly. FIA hit me up hard, I got the answer.
Yeah, but then when it's not their fault to be pushed off as well. But
yeah,
but in that case, you have a helicopter over and he just drops a bucket of ice on Max when he's racing, puts him off, he goes, ah! And then just
no, it just cuts his power because he's incredibly sensitive.
No, can we just like throw a mushroom at him and make it like Mario Kart?
blue shell.
Yeah,
we're going to be getting into Formula E soon with a bloody fan boost where fans can turn up the ERS deployment or something.
I'd like a version of fan boost where I can actually I can vote for someone's power to be turned down.
Yeah.
Oh, imagine. But no, the Halo, it does its job and it's very good. And glad that all 5 drivers, all the drivers have been affected today in F2 and F2 and F1 are fine. Yeah. Quite surprisingly, F3 had no real incidences, which is normally the opposite kind of case. You normally have it in F1 and F3, but not so much in F2. So quite a surprising, quiet race for them, though.
I'm still looking at this photo. It's ridiculous. Like, it is sickening to look at. It is just like very clearly the Halo saved it.
Oh, I'm literally watching the replay of it on Sky. They're showing it on Sky News. Like,
oh, it's a field day if you. Oh goodness me! Right. I don't think there's actually. I thought there'd be more to talk about, but I think there's just that. I think we've actually covered it mostly in the main show, so I think we're all good, really. So thank you if you're still watching. I know it's been quite a long show, but yeah, I think we'll be back tomorrow with the preview for the Austrian Grand Prix. So that'll be tomorrow evening at some point. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you guys later.
Cheers, everyone.